Most of the time, I don't actively seek out live albums unless I hear that they're really good. Usually I'm content with the studio albums, especially since it's hard to record a live album where it'll sound good. But, sometimes you get live albums that can sound better than studio albums, or at least capture a better energy. These live albums are part of our culture, so these are 11 of my favorite live albums in no particular order except for number 1. And the first one I want to talk about is Kiss Alive. What's interesting about the Kiss Alive albums is they've made no secret about doctoring these albums, but with each one they release over the years with better technology, they somehow sound worse and worse over time. Doctoring live albums makes or breaks the experience for some people. I'm not that picky as long as the band is honest about it, but everybody's at the top of their game here. And I also have to keep in context the times. This is how live albums were made back in the 1970s. You can't help but clap along and sing along with the songs here, and Paul Stanley knows how to keep the audience entertained. I really love the album cover, and this album has been in my veins ever since I was a kid. Some people may prefer Alive 2, and while most of the songs on there are really good, I personally have never really cared that much for Side 4, except for maybe Rocket Ride, but if you're going to listen to Kiss Alive, try to get it on vinyl, because I feel like that's the definitive listening experience. Deicide, When Satan Lives. I've never really liked the sound quality of Serpents of the Light. When Satan Lives came out after that album, so the Sonics are corrected big time. I would like to thank Jason Kaiser of Origin for telling me about this album, because if there's anything that this does right, it captures the absolute chaos that's Deicide on a good night. The classic lineup is here, and even if the guitar solos are played a little sloppy sometimes, you can tell that everybody's having a lot of fun. The songs are perfect for the mosh pit, just be careful if you're going to listen to it while driving, because you might get pulled over for speeding. This album is also longer than most Deicide albums, so if you want your Deicide fix, here you go. Iron Maiden, Live After Death. Iron Maiden with their many live albums. There's something great about all of them. With Live After Death, it's such a positive album, and you're left feeling really good after you listen to it. The audience participation in songs like Running Free, the set list, it all has this really good energy. And don't tell me that you didn't laugh the first time you heard Rime of the Ancient Mariner being introduced. Made in England was also really good, which has songs off of Seventh Son of a Seventh Son and Somewhere in Time, if you have to hear those songs. But I feel like Live After Death is just a little more fun to listen to. There's something about Iron Maiden during that time period where everything lined up just right. Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense. I'd read an interview where Trent Reznor said that one of his favorite albums of all time was the Talking Heads' Remain in Light. So I bought it. Excellent album. And as I read up on it, people kept mentioning Stop Making Sense. Music publications often list it as the greatest concert movie of all time. So I said, alright Talking Heads, show me what you got. Within 30 minutes, I was sold. It starts small, and then it just builds and builds and builds, and by the end of it, you're exhausted. In the beginning, David Byrne plays Psycho Killer by himself, and during each of the next few songs, a new member of the Talking Heads joins the band. So by the end of it, there's 9 people on stage, and the stage choreography is insane. And do I need to mention the big suit? Almost every song on this is better than the studio versions. The energy, the performances, the synth sounds, it's all insane and incredibly good. The CD and vinyl versions have different versions of the songs than the movie does. Either they're different takes, or they're doctored, or whatever. So what I did was I ripped the audio from the Blu-ray, and that's what I listen to primarily if I'm just listening to it. If you're not a fan of the band before you watch this, you will be by the end of it. Ministry, Sphincter. In case you didn't feel like showing up, it's probably their most iconic live album. Between the lineup, the video with the fence on the stage, the set list, the audience reaction, the sound quality, it's all damn good. Sphincter, I think, is just a little better, even if not quite as iconic. For one, it covers more songs from more albums, including Filth Pig, which is my favorite Ministry album. But also, the energy is off the charts! This version of New World Order has so much crunch, I usually listen to this one instead of the Psalm 69 version. I also really like the artwork. And if you get the DVD, it has So What and Stigmata, which the CD doesn't have. So, essential live album. Obituary! 10,000 Ways to Die. Obituary has always been a fun live band to begin with, but it's even better if you can take it home with you. I listen to this, and I'm reminded of every Obituary mosh pit I've ever been in. I've had this on my drives for months at a time, and, technically this is a single that got expanded into a live album, but come on, most of the songs are live songs. It's a live album. It starts off with 2 studio tracks, Loathe and 10,000 Ways to Die. Loathe is meh, but 10,000 Ways to Die is pretty badass. And I've listened to this so many times that I know the banter by heart, and I scream along with it every time I listen to it. That's how you know that a live album is good, when you know the banter like the back of your hand. Revolting Cocks. Live, you goddamned son of a bitch. The ultimate Revolting Cocks lineup playing at their wildest. The songs are nastier, funkier, and more organic than the album versions. And these songs are doctored a little bit, but regardless, it's a fun album to listen to. The audience is pumped, and there's a bit of a freshness factor here because there are songs that they played that weren't released yet. It became a landmark album for Wax Trax, and on one of my visits to Chicago, I just had to visit the Metro, just because of this album alone. Skinny Puppy, Ain't It Dead Yet? Skinny Puppy live shows have always been something of a spectacle, and this is no exception. In fact, this takes it to the max. This was filmed during the Cleanse, Fold, and Manipulate tour, and you can definitely tell where their touring budget went, given the stage setup. Ogre captivates the audience throughout with his stage props and his costumes. This was when the band was at the top of their game, and when Dwayne was still with them. It just makes me wonder what a live album from the Last Rites era would have been like. Essential listening and essential viewing. Primus, Suck on This. It's a bit of a rarity when the first thing a band ever releases is a live album. Jane's Addiction did it, and Primus did it. Cheaply produced, and the band had only been together for a couple of months, but there's a surprising level of detail and clarity. It's heavy and busy at times, while also knowing when to slow down and breathe. The audience seems to be having a lot of fun too. You get to hear early versions of songs like Tommy the Cat, which I prefer to the studio version. In fact, this album's better than a lot of the studio albums. Yeah, I went there. It's just a matter of opinion. If you like Primus and you don't own this, you're doing yourself a disservice. Ramones, It's Alive. The Ramones live albums are always good. The thing is, in the later years they played the songs so fast that Joey's vocals suffered a little bit, and clearly they knew about this criticism because on the last album, Adios Amigos, they slowed the songs down a little bit. Well, on It's Alive, the songs are played at an appropriate speed. They're a little faster than the album versions, but not so much to the detriment of the feeling of the songs. So, you might listen to something like Local Live if you want to hear more eras of the band, but this is perfect just for the early albums. And those albums were energetic enough to begin with, but on here, those songs are pumped full of electricity. And my favorite live album of all time is 9 Inch Nails and All That Could Have Been. There isn't one song on this that I can describe as lesser than. Given the technology that the band uses on and off stage, the sound quality is either just as good, if not better than studio quality. This is especially the case with Pretty Hate Machine songs. It's a good album, but, some of the production is a little dated. So, they play those songs harder and better here. The set list is really good because this took place during the Fragility tour, and so there are a lot of Fragile songs on there. And there's also a bit of anger permeating through the whole thing. It is just so good. It's a meticulously crafted show. There are a lot of counterpoints. It's gung-ho in certain sections, it slows down, then it builds back up, and it ends with a bang. If you get the DVD, you can find all sorts of extras by just playing around with the menus. Not to mention, they had the crew go into the crowd with DV cameras, so it feels like you're really there at the show. Beside You in Time was also a really good concert movie, though I feel like this has a little more oomph overall. It never gets old. Excellent, excellent, excellent stuff. And with that, I would like to give honorable mentions to Motorhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith and Everything Louder Than Everything Else. I can't decide which one I like better, otherwise this would have been a list of 12. AC/DC Live, Deep Purple Made in Japan, Ghoul Live in the Flesh, Pink Floyd Pulse, Judas Priest Unleashed in the East, and Ministry in case you didn't feel like showing up. These days, there's not as much of a market for live albums because you can see pretty much any live show on the internet. That being said, I'm always interested in listening to new stuff that can make my bones rattle. So, thank you for listening to me talk about some of my favorite live albums, and grind on.